Göbekli Tepe itself was the end of a process, not the beginning of a process. It was something that marked, it was a marker. It was something that brought together the best of everything that they'd accumulated and created it in one place.
What if we've been looking at the world's oldest temple all wrong? For years, Göbekli has been the ultimate archaeological puzzle, a site that defies the known timeline of human civilization. But today, everything changes. There is a new controversial theory circulating that claims to have finally cracked the code of these stone pillars. And the results are so shocking, they have divided the scientific community. Is it a record of a forgotten catastrophe, or is something even more high-tech? Let's take a look at Göbekli and similar sites that are shaking the foundations of history. Göbekli exposed like never before. Göbekli has become an international sensation. The site is estimated to be about 12,000 years old. No one knows who built it, what it was used for, or whether it truly is the oldest temple on the planet. But one thing's for sure. It was built by people who perfected megalithic engineering 7,000 years before Egypt was born. And now, according to the internet, AI has been busy scanning its ruins in search of secrets. You've probably seen the story. It's circulating on Facebook and YouTube mostly, but there is nothing about it on actual archaeological news sites. The story claims that AI neural networks decoded a sophisticated lunar calendar hidden in one of the pillars. Pillar 43, to be exact. The AI program revealed the carvings to be star maps. Algorithms discovered the entire site as a warning about a comet strike that caused the younger dews. Some YouTubers insist AI detected vast underground chambers filled with perfectly preserved artifacts. There is just one small issue. Not a single peer-reviewed paper exists showing that AI analyzed Goggle. This is not a story about AI uncovering lost knowledge. It's a story about how real, ordinary research mutates when it touches the internet. The original source of this story has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. What really happened was Dr. Martin Sweatman. I know it's a cool last name, right? An engineer from the University of Edinburgh published papers in 2017 and 2024 analyzing the symbols found at Quebec. I repeat, this was a real person, not an AI. Sweatman's work is massively controversial, which could be why it was able to morph into such a strange internet story. He argues that the symbols on Pillar 43 represent a devastating comet strike that changed human civilization forever. His argument rests on a set of V-shaped carvings, which he claims represent a structured calendar system. Sweatman proposes that these carvings functioned as day markers within a solar calendar composed of 12 lunar months plus 11 additional days. Sweatman has even come up with a reason why. He believes the V-shaped symbols track the movements of the sun, the moon, and some constellations. The ancient people used this calendar to mark solstices, celebrations, harvests, animal migrations, and breeding seasons. If correct, this would make the calendar several thousand years older than any other known system and about 10,000 years older than the first Mayan calendars. That's pretty impressive. The issue is that it is Sweatman's theory and not an accepted fact. Sweatman argues that the V-shaped carvings are intentional numerical markers. He says that one of them, a V-shaped symbol attached to the figure of a bird-like creature, represents a constellation associated with the summer solstice at the time the pillar was carved. Based on this alone, Sweatman concludes that the pillar was erected in 10,850 BC, with a margin of error of a few centuries. But that's not the dramatic part. The date Sweatman gave us is significant because it lines up with the Younger Dryas, a period of abrupt cooling that lasted 1,200 years. It was a mini ice age at the end of the very real ice age, which plunged humanity into 1,000 years of bitter chill. Sweatman suspects the younger dews may have been caused by a comet impact event, which he believes is somehow recorded on Pillar 43 in the V-shaped symbols. He's interpreted them as being the date the comet hit the Earth, triggering widespread environmental destruction and contributing to the extinction of large animals like the woolly mammoth. Sweatman also says that this catastrophe placed pressure on human societies to develop a better means of survival. This led to the construction of Göbekli as the world's first permanent settlement. It also led to the invention of farming. There is a mirror hypothesis that claims the impact recorded at Göbekli Tepe actually destroyed an even older civilization, one that ruled the world. Some say the comet hit the ocean, caused a global flood, wiped out all the people, and left just a few stragglers at Göbekli scratching themselves wondering what the heck happened. In this view, the comet impact was responsible for the flood in Genesis. And in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it ties directly to the Bible. But did it really happen? Swatman says yes. Others say no. The team that physically excavates Göbekli from the German Archaeological Institute publish a rebuttal titled More Than a Vulture. In this rebuttal, they criticize Sweatman for cherry-picking symbols, ignoring archaeological context, and overlooking alternative interpretations involving ritual practices and skull cults. Those are the actual archaeologists who work at the site every day calling Sweatman a fraudster. I won't go that far, but there doesn't seem to be enough proof one way or the other. Do the symbols on Pillar 43 point to the stars, or is Sweatman just making things up? If you think you know, let me know in the comments. Basically, this is how one man's controversial study of a controversial site turned into a controversial internet rumor. When it reached social media, Sweatman's disputed interpretations of the site instantly morphed into rumors of AI systems decoding ancient secrets. But in reality, there was no AI involved. That's not to say that AI isn't being used in archaeology, because it is. While the internet invents fake AI breakthroughs at Göbekli, real AI has been transforming archaeology in other places. In Guatemala, LAR scans of jungle terrain were processed using AI machine learning with fantastic results. The eye pinpointed over 60,000 Maya structures hidden beneath the forest canopy. Entire cities, road networks, and fortifications emerged where scientists used to think there was only forest. AI was also just used to decipher an ancient scroll that was roasted when Mount Vesuvius erupted in Italy in 79 AD. The poppy was so carbonized from the heat that just touching it would have destroyed it. But in 2023, researchers trained AI models on X-ray CT scans to detect microscopic differences between carbonized ink and carbonized papyrus. The first word the AI recovered was porphytus. That's Roman for purple. Meanwhile, in Peru, OE archaeologists documented 430 Nazca lines over the span of a century. Then AI was applied and it identified 30 and 3 new geoglyphs in just 6 months. AI is outpacing archaeologists. The frustrating thing is that AI could genuinely help scientists understand Göbekli Tepe better. The site has extensive photographic and 3D scan data that could be analyzed by an AI program. Not to mention, only a tiny fraction of the site has ever been excavated. AI could assist with predictive modeling, pattern recognition, and non-invasive mapping. Neural network enhanced ground-penetrating radar could help visualize buried structures. And you know, there are buried structures here waiting to be found. Computer vision could catalog and compare iconography across the site, possibly proving Swatman's theory. Sadly, none of this has been done. Instead, we got a fake story based on real data and a mystery that seems impossible to solve. But that's not where the story ends. Far from it. There is a lot more going on than you might think. Medik, even older than Göbekli, down the road from Göbekli, is another ancient site called Mendik. Believe it or not, it may turn out to be even older. Given Göbekli's estimated age of somewhere between 11,000 and 13,000 years, it feels like something that should be impossible. But here we are, proving the impossible possible yet again. Mendik is a Neolithic site in southeastern Turkey, just like its nearby cousins, Göbekli and Tepe. They are all similar in that each one is a massive earthen mound full of ruined structures that no one seems able to make sense of. Each time one of these sites is found, it ends up being older than anyone imagined. And this new site is no different, being estimated at over 12,000 years old. Scientists don't have an exact date, but judging by the ruins, they are fairly certain that Göbekli Tepe dates to the earliest part of the Neolithic era. It isn't thousands of years older than Göbekli, but most likely a few decades or centuries. This is huge because for ages, Göbekli has been treated as the starting point for complex human societies. It's often described as the birthplace of history due to its monumental architecture and insanely early date. The place is so old that some think it was the real Garden of Eden. The ongoing excavation at Göbekli Tepe is part of the wider Taş Tempeler project, which focuses on early Neolithic sites across the region. The project aims to understand how early communities transitioned from being hunters and gatherers to permanently settled farmers. Göbekli Tepe is turning into one of the project's most important sites. Göbekli Tepe was first identified by archaeologist Fatma Sahin during regional survey work. In southeastern Turkey, beyond the agricultural fields and low plateaus, a single hill rises to meet the sky. It looks less like a natural bump and more like someone just buried a sandcastle. Locals long ago named it Potbelly Hill. Today, it's called Göbekli. And it's not actually a hill, it's an ancient ritual site from around 9000 BC, which you already know that. But here's a little something new. According to Professor Douglas Baird and the rest of the excavation team, the earliest layers at Göbekli Tepe belong to the very start of the Neolithic. This is year one stuff, guys. The architecture, material culture, and spatial layout point to a community that was already experimenting with permanent structures, meaning there must be even older sites. And indeed, Mendik shows clear connections to other Neolithic sites in the region, including several nearby mounds. The difference is that it displays certain features that are not found in these other locations. One of the most important aspects of Mendik is its range of building types. Excavators have identified structures of different sizes and construction quality as opposed to a primitive site with identical architecture. This variation suggests a settlement where things happened. This place was popping. The various buildings means that people partook in various activities. There were homes naturally, but there also may have been shops where people could purchase food and obsidian arrows. Maybe there were primitive factories where humans processed animal parts into clothing and tools. Temples, storage, maybe an arcade. The point is that this wasn't a collection of mud huts. It was a fully functioning settlement, at a time when, until very recently, scientists thought that humans were living in caves and gnawing on bones like a bunch of cannibals. The presence of other similar mounds in the region, of which there are dozens, suggests this may have been one of the oldest settlements, but not the only one. As more of these sites are found, it's starting to feel unavoidable that Turkey was home to a widespread civilization. Göbekli, Tepe, Mendik. Each one may have been a city within an antediluvian pre-flood civilization. Think about it. All these settlements this close to each other, all from the dawn of humanity. It's not like they were isolated episodes of human ingenuity. You can walk from Göbek to Mendik. It'll take a while, but it can be done. These were towns in what is beginning to look like the first permanently settled region on Earth. Turkey could be where the first house was built, the first storage building held grain, and many other firsts. But then there's Göbekli Tepe, which doesn't have any kind of variation. Everything discovered at Göbekli points to it being a site of ritual significance. An open-air church to gods so old they have no names. Ancient civilizations often had normal cities and then nearby ritual centers that were specifically for religious purposes. The Inca did it, the Maya, the Egyptians, the Romans. Just look at Vatican City. What is it if not just one large settlement strictly for religious purposes? What if Göbekli was the first Vatican? And what if Mandape was the first Rome? That would mean that all the mounds in between like Karahantepe, Sakmake, and dozens more were interconnected communities, all part of the same civilization. What I'm wondering is if civilization started here, what took it so long to get to everywhere else? Let's say that this kingdom of mounds got its start 12,000 years ago. Turkey is not that far from Egypt, even if you're walking. It's even closer to Mesopotamia. So why did it take these humans who could clearly build megalithic structures 7,000 years to walk next door and share their technology? What was happening for all of those years? Why is this region the only place in the whole world with complex stone architecture from this far back? It's like someone hit the pause button in 10,000 BC and then unpause it around 30,000 BC. To make things even more baffling and maybe creepy, these mound cities, mound temples, whatever they were, someone buried them on purpose, like graves. I'll be going into that next, so don't go anywhere. Excavations at Mendik are still ongoing. Only a small portion of the mound has been explored so far. As the work continues, Mendik is expected to yield further evidence about early human organization, hopefully giving us some insight into what the heck happened. Who buried Göbekli? The reason it looks like a hill is that someone a very long time ago buried the place on purpose. Archaeological work has shown that beneath the soil lies a monumental stone complex built of massive T-shaped limestone pillars, just like Pillar 43, arranged in circular enclosures. Many of these pillars are carved with reliefs of animals, predators, and prey, rendered with careful detail and a high level of consistency. It's those animal reliefs that our old friend Dr. Swatman interpreted as being constellations, not just animals. The site dates to a time when human groups are generally thought to have lived in small mobile bands of hunter-gatherers. The discovery of this site changed our understanding of human history by proving that even in the Neolithic age, humans organized into labor forces, built temples, practiced artwork, and lived in communal spaces. I know scientists say that Göbekli predates agriculture, but who's to say they didn't farm? Honestly, how do scientists know there was no tomato garden in Göbekli or any of the other? They simply cannot know for sure that these people weren't farming, at least a little bit. And that brings me to the big issue of today. What happened to the people of Göbekli? And why did they purposely bury their civilization? Here's what we think happened. Archaeological evidence from the site has proven definitively that around 8000 BC, the place was abandoned. The enclosures were filled in with stone, soil, and debris, including scattered animal remains and human bones. The hill that you see on the horizon today appears as the top of a deliberate burial. Why this happened remains one of the biggest questions surrounding the site. If we can figure out why they buried these ancient places, we might know why they built them. When archaeologists from Istanbul first surveyed the hill in the 1960s, they dismissed it as unremarkable. They're probably pretty embarrassed right now. They believed the scattered stones were grave markers from a medieval cemetery. Nothing about the surface suggested a deep prehistoric origin, and so the site was ignored for decades. That changed in 1994 when the German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt re-examined the hill. Schmidt recognized that the protruding stones were not grave markers, but the tops of large pillars. Klaus saw what others didn't. Excavation quickly revealed circular enclosures formed by pairs of tall, T-shaped monoliths, themselves surrounded by smaller pillars, all carved from local limestone. The carvings on the pillars shocked Klaus almost as much as the pillars themselves. He found images of lions, bulls, snakes, scorpions, spiders, gazelles, and other animals. Schmidt also found large quantities of stone tools and fragmented animal bones along with human remains. There was one unusual detail that stood out during excavations. Klaus found no evidence that people lived at the site. Archaeologists uncovered no hearths, no domestic refuge pits, and no structures consistent with permanent habitation. This absence suggested that people came to the site for a specific purpose and then left. Based on this evidence, Schmidt argued that Göbekli was not a village, but a temple or a ritual center, a place set apart from everyday life. This was a massive announcement because it really did change history at the time. This was the 90s. Scientists still thought civilization started in the cradle of Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago. But that's clearly not right, is it? With the discovery of Mendipe as an actual living center, it's now become clear that Göbekli Tepe probably was a religious temple. People traveled there from surrounding villages to engage in community activities. Scientists say rituals, but the truth is, we have no idea. Another reason this revelation shocked so many people was that scientists always told us religion came after agriculture. For centuries, scientists and philosophers said that large ceremonial buildings appear only after agriculture creates food surpluses. A civilization must have an abundance of food available before they can move on and start specializing in things like building and making art. With the introduction of Göbekli, this old model was proved wrong. It's simply not true. Humans can have religion without farming, megaliths without crops, and towns without corn. Schmidt and archaeologist Ian Hodder suggested that instead of agriculture creating social complexity, emerging social and ritual needs may have driven people to intensify food production. In this view, the desire to gather, build, and perform rituals could have pushed communities toward farming to support those activities. This idea is provocative and, may I say, really exciting. It would mean that humans are more driven to build than anything else. We want to build so bad that we constructed towns, developed farming, and advanced technology just so that we could have a more reliable labor force to build bigger things. Then again, it could have been religion that pushed humans to the cornfields. Perhaps creating a god or multiple gods was the motivation that humans needed to get out of the caves and start building stuff. Either way, Göbekli Tepe has shown that hunter-gatherers were capable of far more complexity than we thought. But if you think about it, of course they were. Scientists say we have the same brains. So they were as smart as us, just not with 21st century knowledge. But why bury everything? That's the question. Some experts think the question of why Go was abandoned is tied to its function. If it was a ritual center, its abandonment likely reflects a shift in beliefs. Remember when Pharaoh Akhenaten decided he was bored of all the old Egyptian gods and tried to usher in a new era? I mean, you might not remember because it was 3,300 years ago, but we kind of talk about it a lot around here. Basically, the pharaoh abandoned the old gods in favor of a new god, abandoned the old capital, and tried to build a new one. It was a total disaster. What if something similar happened at Göbekli? Perhaps the old gods whom it was built for originally fell out of fashion. Maybe a new religion arose with priests demanding that the whole sacred space be buried. Just one suggestion, but I'm open to others. If you have ideas, let me know in the comments. Some researchers have suggested it was for preservation, burying the sacred place to protect it, but then this means people were going away for a while, long enough that they had to bury their primary temple so that others wouldn't find it and destroy it. One compelling interpretation sees the burial of this place as a form of ritual desanctification. In many cultures, even modern ones, objects or spaces believed to hold sacred power must be carefully neutralized when no longer in use. Sort of like burning all the photos of you and your ex. Simply abandoning them could be considered dangerous or disrespectful. So it's best to burn them in the yard at 2 a.m. slightly drunk. In Christian traditions, for example, an altar must be ritually desanctified before a church is repurposed. A sacred object used incorrectly could constitute sacrilege. By applying this reasoning to Go, the burial begins to make more sense. The site may have been considered so powerful that it required careful closure. Burying it would prevent accidental misuse and stop anyone from, I don't know, unleashing evil spirits into the world. That sounds good, right? But still, nothing is solved. Nobody knows why the place was abandoned or why it was buried or where the people who built it went. It's one big mystery that no one seems able to solve. But there is hope. In 2025, archaeologists found what's been dubbed the Guardian of Göbekli, and it is really shaking things up. The Guardian of Göbekli. In a discovery that has immediately reshaped all current interpretations of Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists have uncovered a human figure concealed within the stone fabric of one of its monumental walls. It's almost like finding a skeleton in your closet, but this one was hidden for more than 12,000 years. This statue was positioned horizontally between two of the site's largest enclosures, known as structures B and D. Its placement appears to have been intentional, possibly even symbolic. The statue may have been buried as part of a ritual just like Göbekli itself years later. What's amazing is that the figure was revealed during routine conservation and restoration work rather than an archaeological excavation. As stone blocks were stabilized and examined, the outline of a human torso emerged from within the wall. What at first appeared to be a fragment of debris proved to be something far more significant. Archaeologists realized they were looking at a complete sculpture sealed into the structure at the moment it was built. It was bricked in, sealed on purpose as part of the construction process. It's something that human cultures have done throughout history. Even in Britain in the Middle Ages, people would bury witch bottles beneath their floor to protect their home from witchcraft and evil magic. These bottles contain things like pins, nails, and other sharp objects to reflect curses. The Göbekli statue appears to have been something similar, a symbolic object buried within the structure. But was it to protect? And if so, what was it protecting people from? Maybe we can find some answers at Göbekli's sister site where a face has just appeared in the stone. A face in the stone. Excavations at Kahane have revealed a stone figurine much like the one at Göbekli, but different. This figure has stitched lips like a shrunken head. It's pretty terrifying and is joined by a series of unnerving carved stone faces that are equally as terrifying. Plus, scientists found a strange black bead. What made it so strange is that someone carved a pair of faces on it. Experts can't make heads or tails of any of it, but they do suspect that the growing number of human representations marks a clear shift in symbolic practices in the region. Archaeologists working at Tepe interpret this trend of face carving as directly tied to the emergence of settled life. They're saying that as communities became less mobile, the human figure increasingly replaced the natural world as the central reference point for meaning and identity. Let me break it down even further. In ancient cave paintings from 30 or 40,000 years ago, humans painted animals. They loved animals, so they painted scenes of beasts in the wild, humans hunting, and the stars in the sky. Their paintings were primal and of the animal world. Then 12,000 years ago, Göbekli happened. The people in Turkey began building places where they could live permanently. Suddenly, humans weren't so wild. And as humans became less wild and more civilized, their interests changed. Rather than painting wild game, they started painting the faces of those they saw around them every day. Researchers said that humans were no longer looking at the 2 or 3 faces of their close family. They now had neighbors, and this is expressed in the emergence of face carving. At Tepe, the emphasis on human symbolism is much more pronounced than at Lee. Yes, they just found that human statue shoved in a wall, but other than that, everything has been largely animal images. All the reliefs and carvings are of animals, foxes, snakes, birds, lots more. How can this clear difference in imagery be explained? Animals at one site, human faces at the other. What's the deal? Archaeologists suspect the difference could simply be cultural expression, which they say developed differently in different towns. Even though they were all pretty close, each location may have developed its own interests. Göbekli, being a ritual site, was all about the animals. At Tepe, people were obsessed with faces. It really might be that simple, like one ancient Egyptian city being obsessed with crocodiles and the other with hippos. These things did happen. The next question is one you probably saw coming. Who do these carved faces belong to? Are they ancestors, dead kings, or gods? Archaeologists said that interpreting the identities behind the statues and faces remains difficult, if not entirely impossible. Without any kind of written notes, archaeologists literally have to guess. I mean, there's a little bit of context, but not really. The good news is that the past 5 years of work across the various mound sites in Turkey have produced a significant volume of new data. Each building uncovered adds another fragment to the picture of early settled life in the region. Scientists are starting to suspect the differences between the sites could point to a variety of different groups. Everyone has been coming at this mystery from the same angle, thinking that all the sites were built by the same unified culture. But what if they were all different tribes who just so happened to live in the same zone? Maybe they even went to war against each other. I want to know what you think's original function was. Ritual center, observatory, calendar. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time for more amazing history.